Harris County 911. What's the location of your emergency?
I just killed my sister. Oh my God.
Tell me what your name is.
Ben Elliott.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
I thought it was a dream. I took my knife and I stabbed her. Please, I don't want her to die. I'm sorry.
How old is she?
17. We're twins.
Is she awake?
Yes. She's like barely alive.
Is there anyone else there in the house with you?
There is. It's my parents, but they're asleep.
Okay, I need you to go wake them up.
Mom! Dad!
We're gonna have to start CPR right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Keep cupping her chest, just like that, okay?
Where's your son? Where's your son? Okay, we got it. EMS is coming.
Okay, slow down a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Can we take over? Can you step out? Thank you.
What happened, son? It was a dream. He said it was a dream, honey. What the?
I don't know what I'll do if she's not. It was just a dream, and then it wasn't.
I'm gonna do a search of you real quick, and then I'm gonna put you in the back seat out of this rain, okay?
What was your first reaction when you heard about the case?
I was skeptical. Why does he have a knife next to his bed at night? This is the first study that we did on Ben. I'm Dr. Gerald Simmons. I'm a neurologist, sleep disorder specialist.
See, these are rapid eye movements.
I was asked to review the case of Benjamin Elliott. The claim was that he was sleepwalking and stabbed his sister.
We have a video of him right here.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, okay.
You are convinced this was a sleepwalking incident?
Yes.
Are you saying then that he did kill his sister, but he didn't intend to kill his
Correct.
sister?
I wouldn't say that it's impossible for someone to commit a crime while sleepwalking. I just don't think that was the case with Benjamin Elliott.
Were you able to find any evidence that there was a problem with these twins?
No, we definitely looked into it and tried. The biggest thing that they're hanging their hat on is the lack of motive. My name is Megan Long. I'm one of the prosecutors on the case.
So, this is really hard, isn't it, Mike?
I hate this. I hate that she's gone.
This was not Benjamin's fault.
I've never thought of him as somebody responsible for this.
What makes you so sure that you stabbed your sister while you were sleepwalking?
I would never have done that. I loved her. She was my best and closest friend.
On the morning of September 29, 2021, 17-year-old Benjamin Elliott was in a Harris County Sheriff's interrogation room in Houston, Texas.
So what happened, Benjamin?
You ever have like a really realistic nightmare? Where like just everything feels real, but also off at the same time?
Benjamin told Detective Freder Munoz that he stabbed his twin sister once with this knife, but had little memory of what had happened.
So you go to sleep. What's the next thing you remember?
The next thing I remember is like the feeling of stabbing something. I was in her room and I turned on the light and I was panicking and I tried to stop bleeding with the the pillow. So I run in my room and I unplug my phone and I dial 911.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
I stabbed my sister.
How many times did you stab her?
Just once.
I heard the 911 call and I screamed.
What's going on? I can't bring her to you what?
And I went to go move into the bedroom. As I moved, I saw Megan, and she was, gray, you know?
Michael Elliott remembers calling out to his wife, Kathy.
I heard Michael yell.
Oh my God!
I was trying to figure out what's going on, and Michael said the police are here,
Where's the brother at?
and I just...
Arriving paramedics took over CPR.
They took Benjamin out of the house. He was shocked. He said it was a dream.
What did you make of that?
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't.
Not the Ben you knew, so it would have to have been that he was.
Something would have had to happen.
Benjamin, his parents say, sat handcuffed in a police car for 3 hours while police, confronted with an apparent homicide, took control of the crime scene.
I just need to see her.
We can't. No,
I need to see her.
Nobody would tell us if Megan was okay, what was going on.
Take a picture for me. Let me see something.
Yeah, can we see something?
No, sir.
The Elliots say they felt isolated by the police and eventually called a longtime friend who is also an attorney.
He went and got some information, and he told us that Megan had died.
It was news police didn't share with Benjamin.
Is she okay?
Benjamin asked Detective Munoz several times if his sister was all right,
She is okay.
but the detective withheld the truth.
Yeah, last time I know about, she was being checked out by the EMS.
Authorities say this is a textbook police technique to keep a suspect talking, and they wanted Benjamin talking about his feelings for his sister.
So how's your relationship with Megan?
Good. She's my twin sister. I'd do anything for her.
No rivalry there?
No.
You guys having any recent fights or anything like that?
No. We're pretty close for siblings.
Benjamin, who spoke to police without a lawyer, said he loved his sister and described what he says he remembered before the stabbing. Phone records show he was scrolling the web, and Benjamin says he thinks he fell asleep somewhere around 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning.
Where would that phone be at right now?
Somewhere at the crime scene.
Benjamin provided Munoz with his iPhone password and permission to search his phone.
Have you ever been diagnosed with any mental illnesses?
No.
Benjamin said there were no problems at home and said that he was looking forward to college.
I'm thinking about mechanical engineering. I'm taking the SAT, I think, Friday? No, Saturday.
Let me ask you, the knife that you had in your hands, where'd you get it from?
From my dad. He had given it to me that day. It was like a Air Force survival knife. I was really enamored with it.
Benjamin and Megan's parents had a big collection of knives and gear. The family is big into camping. Kathy is senior manager with the Girl Scouts of America. Michael is a stay-at-home dad.
I know that if I had not given him that knife, this would not have happened. And
After 2 hours in that interrogation room, at 11 a.m., Munoz finally revealed that Megan was dead.
I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Megan did not make it.
He and Megan are so close, you could never picture anything bad happening between them.
Longtime friend Drew Whitaker was stunned to learn Benjamin was in police custody.
He was very protective of her.
She says her family and the Elliots have been close since 2005.
Ben was very engineering focused.
Whitaker, herself an engineer, described Benjamin as soft-spoken, smart, funny, and a bit nerdy, while Megan was sensitive, wrote poetry, and loved to draw. As a teenager, Megan had been diagnosed with autism.
And how did she feel about Ben?
She loved him. She looked up to him. You would see her walk up next to him when she would feel uncomfortable and just kind of stand by him.
Did he ever get tired of having to take care of Megan?
I think he was proud of it. Like he liked being a protector.
The Elliots say the twins seemed happy in the weeks before the stabbing. With their eldest child, Elizabeth, already off at college, the twins toured separate universities.
Megan at this point had started coming out of her shell as well. She was finding her voice. And she had found friends online, and she had a YouTube channel where she was doing art.
The night before Megan's death, father and son spent hours playing popular video games, such as Survive the Nights. It was in that video game that Benjamin noticed a military-style knife that his father said resembled one that he owned. Michael offered to give it to Benjamin.
Unfortunately, I went and got the knife out.
The Elliots remember heading off to bed. Was there any problem at all between the twins? The Elliots, like police, couldn't make sense of why Benjamin stabbed Megan. But police had the teenager's confession, the bloody knife he used, along with a disturbing detail discovered at autopsy. Megan hadn't been stabbed just once. She had 2 stab wounds. Benjamin Elliott was charged with the murder of his twin sister. After several days on suicide watch, 17-year-old Benjamin Elliott was released on bail. His parents were there waiting for him.
I saw them put him out, and he just kind of stood there on the sidewalk, and I went, sorry. It's okay. I went up to him, and he seemed, I told him, I said, hey, Ben, and he seemed like he didn't see me. He was surprised to see me. We started driving, and we were asking him if he was okay, and we were getting very
quiet,
quiet, single word answers.
So Michael pulls the car over and stops, and he gets out, comes around, and takes his face in his hands, and he says, it's like, hi, we love you, hi, and he just...
Yeah, and I saw him kind of, sort of wake.
And then he just hugged us.
Yeah.
The Elliots knew they could never sleep in their home again and had already moved in with Kathy's mother.
Ben was worried that he might walk around, and he was worried that he might do something, and he wanted to make sure everybody was safe.
The Elliots were worried too.
The first 2 nights I slept in a chair in front of the door.
The couple even installed an alarm on Benjamin's door. Because his attorneys had asked them not to speak with their son about the night Megan was killed, they couldn't ask him the burning question, why?
There's never been anything wrong with him at all.
Where my mind went was a mental health something.
Kathy's father was schizophrenic. She now feared her son might be. So did Benjamin's lawyers, Wes Rucker and Carrie Hart.
So we had a psychiatrist sit down with him. I fully expected her to come back and say, he's got schizophrenia or he's severely bipolar. When she calls me up, she said, Wes, he's fine. It blew my mind.
They came to suspect that Benjamin experienced something else entirely. He was actually sleepwalking when he killed his sister. Had either one of you ever had a case quite like this?
Never.
No.
You have a twin causing the death of the other, and the last thing you think of is this a sleepwalking case.
But Benjamin had told police the night he stabbed his sister, it felt like a dream. And his lawyers say that sleepwalking defenses have been used successfully in the past. In 1987, Canadian Kenneth Parks drove his car 14 miles to his mother-in-law's home, beat her to death with a tire iron, and stabbed her. He claimed he was asleep the whole time, and a jury believed him. And in North Carolina in 2010, Joseph Mitchell strangled his 4-year-old son and attacked 2 of his other children, all while sleepwalking. A jury also found him not guilty.
The big question here is just whether Ben Elliott, in fact, killed his sister while he was sleepwalking.
Correct.
So Benjamin's lawyers reach out to Dr. Gerald Simmons, a neurologist and a sleep disorder expert.
When I first was approached, I was very skeptical. The next question is, did I even want to deal with this? My first reaction to this is, well, who else are they going to go to? I mean, within the field of sleep medicine, this is what I do.
Simmons wanted to do a sleep study with Benjamin to test if it's possible Benjamin could experience something called a parasomnia.
In general, think of a parasomnia as an abnormal behavior that occurs during sleep.
Like sleepwalking.
Sleepwalking would be a parasomnia.
Simmons asked if Benjamin had a history of sleepwalking, and his lawyers say he did. When he was about 10 years old, Benjamin's older sister Elizabeth found him sleepwalking by her bedroom door. There was also a sleepover with childhood friends the night this photo was taken, when Benjamin was found asleep on a couch eating a donut. When they woke him, he seemed surprised and confused. Simmons also learned that there were other members of the Elliott family who sleepwalked.
The likelihood genetically is higher to have parasomnia, specifically non-REM parasomnias, if there are other family members that have had that.
My uncle apparently used to sleepwalk when he was a teenager. He would go out into the garage and, with the tools. And apparently he walked in on my mom one time when she was in the shower.
Kathy also had an aunt who once walked out of her house while she was asleep.
Ran out into the woods in the middle of the night and,
Just waking up in the middle of a thunderstorm outside.
And here's a video, right here.
Simmons conducted 2 sleep studies with Benjamin in his sleep lab 6 weeks apart. In each, Benjamin was hooked up to machines that monitored just about everything his body did as he slept.
This is brainwave activity here. So we did the sleep study. I saw that he had obstructive sleep apnea.
Obstructive sleep apnea, says Simmons, is where the airway becomes partially blocked, creating a disturbance in the sleep pattern.
So he's sleeping, struggling a bit to get breath,
right? Yes.
And that could be the
Yes.
trigger.
Yes.
A trigger that Simmons says could cause a sleepwalking episode, particularly when Benjamin's brainwaves enter what is known as a non-REM slow-wave sleep.
Now he's in slow wave sleep.
This is slow wave sleep.
Sleepwalking will typically occur in non-REM slow wave sleep.
During the sleep studies, Benjamin did not sleepwalk, but Simmons observed how quickly Benjamin entered that non-REM slow-wave sleep.
So it was 11 minutes from the time we turned off the lights until he was in slow wave sleep.
This is important because on the night Benjamin stabbed Megan, his phone activity stopped at 4:17 a.m. It was just 24 minutes later that he was on his phone calling 911.
I just killed my sister.
What's your location?
Simmons says the fact that Benjamin is able to reach slow-wave sleep so quickly means it's possible Benjamin was sleepwalking during that period of time his phone was inactive.
I thought it was a dream.
Do you believe Ben killed his sister without even realizing he was doing it in his sleep?
Yes. Ben definitely killed his sister. He did it. There's no question. He's the one that had the knife and he stabbed her. But I believe it was part of a parasomnia. He didn't do this voluntarily. There was no motivation.
Dr. Simmons' findings took Benjamin's parents by surprise.
It's scary as hell. If that can happen to us, then that could happen to anybody with a sleep problem.
He realized he was sinking the knife into something or someone, and then woke up and realized it was his sister.
After sleep expert Dr. Gerald Simmons made his assessment that Benjamin was sleepwalking when he killed his twin sister, the Elliots were hopeful prosecutors might drop the case.
At that point, we thought it might not go to trial.
But in April 2023, a year and a half after Megan's death, a grand jury indicted Benjamin Elliott, then 19 years of age, of first-degree murder.
We just didn't think that what we saw was sleepwalking.
Megan Long and Maroon Kutani would handle the prosecution. It wasn't Long's first sleepwalking case. In 2019, she successfully convicted a man who claimed he was sleepwalking when he shot and killed his wife. And Long told us she herself was a sleepwalker, as were her children. Still, Long disputes the Elliott's claim of a family history, since she says neither of Benjamin's parents have been sleepwalkers.
From our conversations with our sleep expert, family history of sleepwalking is a factor. It's more prevalent when it's like first-degree family members, so your parents.
The prosecutors hired their own sleep consultant, psychologist Dr. Mark Pressman, who concluded Benjamin was not sleepwalking when he stabbed Megan. He says sleepwalkers become aggressive only when someone physically interferes with them.
And they respond by hitting or kicking or throwing furniture, but that's like a reflex, an instinctive reflex to protect themselves.
And he points out that Benjamin would have had to have unsheathed the knife before he used it in the stabbing, which Pressman believes is a complex, conscious action, not an unconscious one.
The next thing I remember is the feeling of stabbing something.
He also says it's unusual for a sleepwalker to recall details the way Benjamin did to authorities after he stabbed Megan.
He remembered the feeling of the knife going into the neck. Okay, so that's a memory. Okay, shouldn't be able to have that memory.
Aren't there sometimes pockets of memory?
Not in these cases, no.
Dr. Simmons disagrees. He says Benjamin told police what he could recall.
If he was trying to fabricate this or just use this as an alibi, it would have been just as easy for him to say, I don't remember anything. Instead, I interpret it as he's trying to be as honest as he can.
But Pressman felt he had enough information to make his determination.
You didn't think you needed to talk to Ben?
No.
Prosecutor Long knew she needed more than an expert's assessment to convict Benjamin, especially because she couldn't identify a motive for murder. No one had witnessed any problems between the twins.
Is there no motive because he was sleepwalking, or is there no motive just because no one's willing to come forward and tell us?
And they think they could convince a jury that Benjamin's actions were intentional that night, stabbing Megan twice. One wound was 4 inches deep and severed her carotid artery and jugular vein.
So he's saying that he stabbed her in the neck, removed the knife with where she was stabbed. Blood would be coming out of her neck. You should see some sort of blood spatter on the walls. And there isn't any of that.
Benjamin had told police he used a pillow to stop the bleeding.
And I tried to stop bleeding with the pillow that was behind her. I did that.
Long doesn't believe that.
I think he wanted to cover her face. I think maybe even muffle if she were to scream or anything like that. The only way for there not to be that blood spatter is it had to be there when he took the knife out. It wasn't there for life-saving measures.
But he's calling 911, so he's not trying to hide what he had done, right?
I think at that point, when he's making that 911 call, he realizes, I can't hide what I've just done.
What's your name?
Kutani claims Benjamin is whispering on the 911 call and is suspicious why he's not yelling to his parents for help.
Please, I don't want you to die. I'm sorry.
I think he's whispering because he doesn't want his parents to come to the same reality that he's now living in, that he took his sister's life. I think that that's why he doesn't awake them before calling 911. I think that's why he doesn't scream in the house when he realizes what he's done.
And they argue Megan was already dead by the time Benjamin called 911.
Okay, sir, can we take over? By the time EMS got there, she wasn't breathing on her own. She had no heartbeat. Our medical examiner said that with the wound that she suffered from, she would have been dead within minutes.
Benjamin's interrogation raised even more questions, they say, especially when Benjamin described his house as a crime scene.
Benjamin Elliott is asked by Deputy Munoz, "Where's your phone?" Benjamin Elliott responds with, "It's at the crime scene." And to us, that was significant. Not many 17-year-olds would respond with, "At the crime scene." Most people would say, "At my house, in my room."
And there is more, says Kutani.
His demeanor and his behavior is very calm, certainly not the type of behavior you would expect from somebody who comes to with a knife in their hand and their sister dead in the sleep of her own bedroom.
Could he be in shock? I mean, realizing what he had done? Isn't that possible?
I think based on his response to Deputy Munoz in a couple portions of the interview, we can tell that he's not necessarily in shock with what the consequences of his actions were.
During the interview, Benjamin told police that his sister had struggled with her mental health.
My sister had a pretty severe depression for a while, Megan.
To prosecutors, that suggested maybe everything wasn't so perfect in the Elliott family. A contention that Benjamin's lawyers find ridiculous. They say investigators made virtually no effort to learn about the Elliots or Benjamin.
They don't have a clue about this kid. They weren't even curious.
He would know what was going to happen to him if he killed his sister. There was nothing for him to gain. There was everything for him to lose. There's just no reason why he would have done that.
Before trial, prosecutors offered Benjamin a 30-year plea deal. He turned it down.
The tragedy is now the family lost their daughter, but they're now losing their son. He's on trial for his life.
He's a victim. He went to sleep. He woke up and he found out he had killed his sister.
After struggling with Megan's loss, the Elliots now face the possibility they could lose Benjamin too.
It's a nightmare that happened to all of us.
All right, for the jury.
Benjamin's first-degree murder trial began on February 18, 2025.
You tell your colleagues, I have a client who killed his twin sister and we believe he was sleepwalking, and they think you're crazy.
But with no evidence of any problems between the twins, Benjamin's lawyers hope they could convince a jury that sleepwalking is the only explanation. Even prosecutors knew the lack of motive could be a problem.
I think our biggest hurdle going into this trial was the why.
So you made sure you had jurors who at least be open to the idea they may never know why Megan Elliott was stabbed.
Right.
In his opening remarks, Maroon Katani made it clear that while there was no motive, they had their murderer.
He calls 911 at 4:41. Hello? Hello?
I just killed my sister.
I stabbed her with a knife.
Oh my God.
He's whispering.
Prosecutors told jurors about Benjamin's behavior during that interrogation.
And you'll see his demeanor in the interview.
Pointing to Benjamin's reaction when the detective tells him Megan is dead.
Sorry to tell you this, but Megan has succumbed to her injuries. And the defendant says,
Witnesses offered details about her wounds, the lack of blood spatter, and the prosecution's theory that Benjamin covered Megan's head with a pillow while he stabbed her. And Benjamin's father was surprised to learn that prosecutors would ask him to identify Megan's body for the record.
This is a photo taken from an autopsy.
Yeah, that's Megan.
No further questions, Your Honor.
After the prosecution rested, defense attorneys Carrie Hart and Wes Rucker took over,
Good morning.
making their case about sleepwalking.
And this is not a ruse. This is not some defense to get Ben off of a tragic, tragic set of circumstances. This is a real phenomenon.
And that call Benjamin made to 911, the defense says that's evidence he was desperate to save Megan.
He's saying things like, oh my God.
I thought it was a dream.
I thought it was a dream.
I don't want her to die.
I don't want her to die. He's trying to do CPR.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Family friend Drew Whitaker told the jury about Benjamin's devotion to Megan.
Ever notice that if the sweet kid or the tender kid change into somebody else?
Absolutely not.
Appearing by Zoom, childhood friend Anand Singh told the jury about that sleepover when he found Benjamin asleep and eating a donut.
Just the sheer confusion on his face, like he genuinely seemed baffled as to how that happened.
Benjamin's great aunt, Martha Knight Oakley, a psychologist, told the jury about her own sleepwalking history, including finding herself in the woods one night.
All I know is I came to in the bushes, clutching my dog.
But the defense team's star witness was Dr. Gerald Simmons. He testified for 4 hours, detailing the science and sleep studies that convinced him of Benjamin's innocence.
It totally fits in line with a process we call sleepwalking violent behaviors.
On rebuttal, prosecutors called their own sleepwalking expert, Dr. Mark Pressman.
I concluded he was not in a sleepwalking state.
How did you come to that conclusion?
He had memory. He is said to have come out of the state much faster than any sleepwalker could ever do.
In closing arguments, prosecutors described a deliberate murder.
Benjamin Elliott walked into his sister's room with this very knife, and he stabbed her in the neck twice. There's no blood spraying in the room. You know why? The only thing soaked in blood is the pillow that he muffled her screams with.
Benjamin's defense attorneys pushed back.
If you're trying to cover something up, you're not calling 911. You're not begging for someone to help your sister.
And they appealed for justice.
You do not convict a young man, a 17-year-old, because of how he looks or because how he answers interrogation questions.
But prosecutor Megan Long had the final word, and she suggested the family was involved in a cover-up that began with calling the friend who is a lawyer.
Look, I'm a mother. I understand wanting to protect your children. I get it, but you can't let them get away with it. They have been protecting him from the get-go.
Long didn't leave it there.
They want to say that this family life was perfect, but we don't necessarily know what happens behind closed doors.
And what she said next stunned the courtroom, filled with the Elliott family and friends.
I want you to look in this courtroom. There are so many people here for Benjamin. There is not one person here for Megan.
I'm going to object to that.
But the judge let the prosecution continue.
You have to be her hero. He knew exactly what he was doing. There's been no remorse shown here in this courtroom by him.
After 4 days of testimony, the case went to the jury.
We took a vote immediately.
Jurors were divided.
It was split 7-5.
Could they reach a verdict?
I was a sleepwalker, and one of my own children used to sleepwalk too as a young.
Several of the jurors who decided Benjamin's fate knew a lot about sleepwalking.
You know someone who was a sleepwalker?
Absolutely, yes. Had a family member, yes. On my mom's side, my grandfather.
But even with their experience, they were deeply conflicted about Benjamin.
We spent a lot of time with the interview by the detective.
I'm taking the SAT, I think. Friday.
He talked about how he was going to go take the SAT. He just seemed to not have a lot of remorse.
It didn't take them long to come to a unanimous decision.
All right for the jury?
My understanding is that y'all have a verdict, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
After 4 hours of deliberations,
We, the jury, find the defendant, Benjamin David Elliott, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment, signed by the foreman of the jury, printed by the foreman of the jury.
I remember hearing guilty. And I was completely shocked.
Benjamin Elliott, who did not testify at trial, later spoke to 48 hours inside the county jail.
I feel like this has been a miscarriage of justice, I guess. I am not guilty of murder for my sister, Megan Elliott.
Benjamin, now 21 years old, said he and his family were appalled by the way prosecutor Megan Long ended her closing argument.
There are so many people here for Benjamin. There is not one person here for Megan.
That was crazy to me.
What do you mean?
Everyone in that courtroom was there for Megan.
I understand wanting to protect your children.
And his parents were outraged by the statements made by prosecutors, hinting to problems within the family.
We don't necessarily know what happens behind closed doors.
They were lying.
Yeah, it was horrible.
They waited until the closing when they knew that
Yeah.
nothing could be said afterwards to pull out these outlandish implications about you don't know what happens behind closed doors.
Yeah, she knows damn well there's not a shred of evidence that anything untoward was happening in our house, in our family.
Benjamin and his parents had little time to let the guilty verdict sink in.
Does he have to say yes?
They were back in court for sentencing the following day.
And he is the one that went into her room that night and snuffed the life out of her.
Prosecutors asked for 40 years, but a member of the jury asked the judge for leniency because he worried about Benjamin's family.
Stand up, Mr. Elliott.
Judge Danilo Lacayo told the court he wanted a sentence that he could live with.
I sentence you to 15 years in prison. This time, you will go with the...
The request for leniency, says Benjamin, makes him wonder if a few jurors had more doubts than they wanted to admit.
If you believe that I crept into my sister's bedroom and murdered her while she was asleep, why would you possibly want leniency for that person? That person is horrible.
Are you that person?
No. I'm not. I'm not that person. I mean, I try to be genuine. I try to be honest. I'd like to think of myself as a good person.
Benjamin says authorities misconstrued everything he did.
I stabbed her in her neck.
Starting with that 911 call. The prosecutors say you were whispering on the phone. Were you?
No, that's ridiculous. I wasn't whispering. Please, I don't want her to die. I'm so sorry. I was panicked. I wasn't screaming into the phone because I'm just not I don't really yell.
And Benjamin insists that as soon as he realized what he had done, he was trying to help Megan, using the pillow to try to stop the bleeding. The state says that you didn't use the pillow to try to stop the bleeding. You did it to keep her from screaming. What do you say to that?
That's crazy to me. And there's absolutely zero forensic evidence for that at all.
And what about his seemingly calm demeanor throughout the police interview?
The plan is I'm taking the SAT.
You're talking to a deputy, and you're talking about SATs and colleges.
I'm trying to get my mind off of things.
I've had some issues with school stuff sometimes where...
I think you can see it in the conversation. I keep pretty much steering the conversation away from what happened. I don't want to think about it.
As for learning Megan had died, Benjamin says he just shut down. and that he was desperately hoping she'd be okay. Do you feel you're guilty of anything?
No.
You don't?
No. No, I don't think this is my fault at all. I used to blame myself for it because it's like, I mean, I was the one holding the knife, right? But, I mean, I've come to realize that I'm not. You know, I couldn't have done anything any different than what I had done.
And Benjamin says he misses his twin.
It's really hard that she's not here.
Isn't it hard to know that it's because of you she's not here?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard. We did everything together. Like we were very, very close. And she was a wonderful person. She was an artist. The way she looked at the world, she looked at it with like a creative mind. So she would just see just beautiful things everywhere.
New CBS next Saturday.
This is the parking garage right here.
A man is found murdered in his car.
I saw a body, a person sitting in the driver's seat.
How do investigators catch the masked killer?
Look at him just coming around the corner like that.
Who painted cameras to hide the crime? 48 Hours is all new. Next Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Welcome back to Postmortem. I'm your host, 48 Hours correspondent Anne-Marie Green, and joining me today to discuss the season premiere episode of 48 Hours is 48 Hours correspondent Erin Moriarty. Erin, how many seasons has it been for you now?
Okay, I was trying to count, and I think it's 35, which means isn't this your first full season? So you have a little bit to catch up with me.
All right. I'm working on it. Still, with all those seasons under your belt, this is quite an episode. I don't know if you've done anything like this one before. It's the perplexing case of Ben Elliott. He murdered his twin sister, Megan, in 2021. They were both just 17 years old at the time. Now, Ben maintains his innocence. He admits that he stabbed his sister, but he says he was sleepwalking and he did not intend to harm her. So this is one of those episodes, Erin, that throughout the hour, my mind kept on changing about whether or not, I felt it was intentional. I felt that, whether or not he was guilty. I couldn't really decide.
Anne-Marie, I'm with you. I was conflicted as well. When I first started on the story, I thought, well, that's a novel defense, but I thought of it as a defense. But I have really gone 180. The problem here is our criminal judicial system that is based on adversarial sides. The courts want to find guilt or innocence, guilt or not guilty. In this case, we know he did it. Ben Elliott admits he stabbed his sister, but we don't know why or if he intended to. And the other problem with this case, which you and I will talk about, is this is a young man who never shows a lot of emotion.
Absolutely. We will get into his demeanor. But before we even sort of get into the case, we'll just remind people that if you haven't actually listened to this episode of 48 Hours, you can do so. You can find the full audio version just below this episode that you're listening to in your podcast feed. Go take a listen and then come on back for this conversation. Okay. You actually have a pretty unique perspective here. You are a twin, which I'm just learning.
I am a twin. I have a twin sister. We are not identical, but we are very close. And so this case hit me hard. It was hard not to look at this case as a twin. I can't in a million years imagine hurting my twin. It's the person I knew before anybody. And in this case, there didn't seem to be any problem between these two people. So how do you make sense of that?
Yes, the prosecution argues that Ben intentionally killed his sister and that he wasn't sleepwalking, that this was just sort of an excuse, something that he made up. But they never really established a motive. And me, as the viewer/juror watching this, that bothered me.
What was so troubling about this case is that not only was there no evidence of a motive or a problem between these twins, everyone that the prosecution talked to said that Ben loved his sister and loved being her protector. She had been diagnosed as autistic, and he, according to the witnesses, wanted to protect her. But here's something else to think about. They couldn't find any evidence on either one of the twins' phones. You would think if there was a problem between the two, there'd be some kind of text trail. Another thing, this is a young man who used his phone all the time. If he was just going to use sleepwalking as a defense, an excuse, wouldn't you think he'd do some research? Well, they didn't find any. So I found this all so troubling because, again, the prosecutors say he's a danger to society. That's
Right.
why they charged him with first degree, and fought to get him convicted of first degree murder. And yet there's no evidence other than the act itself, which is pretty awful, that he really intended to do this.
Mm-hmm. I think that that would have helped me as I was watching The Hour if they could give me the why, even though they don't really have to. But the other thing that I kept on thinking about as I was watching The Hour is just how much do you know about sleepwalking? I think immediately what comes to mind is sort of this visual of this person walking with their eyes closed and their arms out, sort of zombie-like, not, somebody doing sort of complicated tasks. But I have to say, I have heard some crazy things about people, could be an urban myth, but I mean, cooking a turkey while sleepwalking and all that sort of stuff.
Well, it's not crazy for someone to actually cook while they're sleeping. I learned that. So just so that people understand what it is, there's a large category called parasomnias, and sleepwalking is one of those. So is sleep eating, or if you want to say
Wow.
sleep cooking. And it really happens, and it's more common than I realized it is. But crimes committed while you're sleepwalking is less common, although it does happen. Here's the real problem, Anne-Marie, and it was a problem reporting on this. There are usually no witnesses to somebody sleepwalking. And so they sometimes have to kind of guess about what happens during those episodes. So we have experts, because they were used in the trial, both on the defense side and on the prosecution side. And both sides agree that parasomnia, sleepwalking, does occur. They also agree when it occurs. It occurs during a period of your sleep, which is non-REM, slow wave sleep. And it's when you're almost like in a twilight zone between sleep and being awake. But then the experts disagree. And here's the problem. You have the defense witness saying that there are pockets of memory. And that's why Ben Elliott could remember stabbing. But the state's witness says there are no pockets of memory. The fact that he could remember stabbing his sister meant he was not sleepwalking.
And, what we're talking about here, too, is not just sort of like stumbling around your bedroom, right? We're talking about a very violent act. Do the experts have any opinion on what might cause someone who's normally not violent to act out violently in their sleep?
Dr. Pressman, the prosecution's sleep expert, said that something has to happen to the sleepwalker. Somebody has to interfere with their movement. But again, because in most of these cases, there are no cameras, no witnesses, they don't know exactly. We don't know what happened in that bedroom. Did Megan wake up? Did she put a hand up to try to stop him? We don't know.
Dr. Pressman, He said something along the lines of, he knew that he wasn't sleepwalking because he came out of it quickly. And I just sort of thought, how did he know how quickly he came out of it? Because there were only 2 people in that room, and it certainly wasn't the expert.
Exactly. He's claiming that the fact that Ben said, I remember stabbing her, meant that he had come out quickly to have that kind of memory. Dr. Pressman says he shouldn't have any memory of it. The prosecution actually used the fact that Ben had some memory against him by saying that Ben had actually killed his sister earlier and had time to come up with a story, and then calling 911. Again, as you point out, Emery, there were no cameras, there were no witnesses. We don't know, and the experts don't know.
Mm-hmm. So here's kind of like my journey with Ben, right? Initially, I just thought, his presentation is a little odd, and it starts with that 911 call. At this point, you've listened probably to hundreds of 911 calls. Sometimes people are frantic and yelling. Sometimes they are very measured and controlled. They want to get the information out. Ben had this soft, whispery voice. It just was a little odd.
Well, and it was odd to the prosecutors. That was part of the trial. In fact, the prosecutor imitated the phone call in front of the jurors and was whispering. And that's fair to an extent, because certainly when you listen, as you did, Anne-Marie, it does sound like he's whispering, and he may have been. But I also want to point out that when I met Ben Elliott in the jail and interviewed him, he is very soft-spoken.
Yeah.
And he doesn't show a lot of emotion. And what he said to me was that he wasn't whispering, that's how he talks.
But then why didn't he scream out to his parents? That was the other thing that kind of bothered me. I thought, why is it that the parents are finding out what's happening, when the cops are showing up? Why wouldn't he say, oh my God, help me?
Well, you know what, Emery, that is such a good question. And it's certainly what the prosecution pointed out. Why did he call 911? Why did he keep his voice down? He didn't want his parents to know. And that's possible. But can I just point out, here's where my experience as a twin comes in. So when you are a twin, whether you're identical or not, you have a real closeness. That is who you share everything with. And I just want to throw out that possibility that as a twin, he was calling 911 because he was thinking of his sister and then didn't think about calling his parents until the 911 operator asked him to. It's a possibility. As a twin, I see that as a possibility.
I think the other thing that really surprised me about this episode is just how many people are familiar with sleepwalking. Because I kind of went through, it's nowhere close to sleepwalking, but my husband talks in his sleep. And when we first met, it would be sort of this mumbly stuff that I couldn't understand, but it's definitely progressed over time. But I mean, one of the prosecutors was a sleepwalker, her children, jurors knew sleepwalkers. I was like, how many people are sleepwalking? And then I also thought, could that have an impact on, whether or not they thought he was guilty or innocent? Because I don't know. Do you know if their familiarity with sleepwalking had an impact on how they decided this case?
I think, Emery, it was a double-edged sword. In one hand, it helped the defense because you had jurors who knew that sleepwalking exists, and they heard during the trial that Ben seemed to have a history of sleepwalking. The other side of that sword is, though, that committing a crime while sleepwalking is very rare. None of the people who were familiar with sleepwalking knew someone who committed a crime. And I think that's hard for someone to believe, that even jurors who knew that people sleepwalk, to believe that someone could actually commit a terrible crime like this. They also heard testimony from Dr. Pressman, who says that during sleepwalking, you can't have conscious thought, and made a big deal that in order for Ben to have stabbed his sister, he had to pull his knife out of the sheath. And Dr. Pressman testified that that was too much of a conscious thought. And yet, you and I know that there have been cases where somebody has driven and then committed a crime while sleepwalking, and the jury acquitted that person of murder.
Welcome back. Let's dive into the really chilling body cam footage. When first responders arrive on the scene, Ben is giving Megan CPR compressions. His parents, Michael and Kathy, they are there. They are distraught. They are confused. They ask police what has happened to their daughter, Megan.
Well, Anne-Marie, at first glance, when you see that body cam footage and you see these parents asking and the police are saying, we're not going to tell you, it seems cruel at first glance, but you have to realize that they're walking into that house not knowing what happened, who exactly was involved. They just know someone inside that house was involved. Maybe they all were. And so until they could really understand what happened, they did not want to share any information. They didn't want anyone in the house sharing stories, getting a story together until they could figure out exactly what did happen. It really makes more sense when you look at it from the vantage point of these investigators walking in cold.
It does make sense. I imagine for Michael and Kathy, though, as this whole thing sort of continues to unfold, they then decide that they're going to call a family friend who happens to be an attorney. Now, prosecutors use that decision a little bit against them, frame it like it's a very suspicious thing to do.
Well, and we see this over and over again in these cases, Anne-Marie. So the family wants to know what to do. Most of the time, they've never been involved in a situation like this. So they had a friend who was a lawyer. And in fact, that lawyer helped them find out what happened to Megan. That's how they found out that their daughter had died. But then at trial, it was used against the family by the prosecution. And we see that happening over and over again in cases. The prosecutors said that the family had conducted a cover-up from the, and I'm quoting, the get-go, from the very beginning. Because from the prosecution's viewpoint, if you have nothing to hide, why are you calling a friend who's a lawyer?
So Ben's family, his parents, they're already going through this heartbreaking experience. But now part of the prosecution's narrative is, and they're involved in a cover-up. Their head must have been spinning.
Well, can I just tell you, this was one of the most emotional interviews I've done with parents. As you can imagine, they have lost a daughter. They feared they'll lose their son. For the first time, I found out that they thought maybe he had schizophrenia. They really seemed, and they said to me that they really wanted to know what happened. So they were very upset with the idea that anyone would accuse them of a cover-up. And they point out that Ben was willing to talk to the state's expert, sleep expert, but that the state sleep expert did not want to talk to Ben. That expert felt he had enough information by looking at the reports and the evidence in the case, and did not need to talk to Ben, is what he said to me. So the family was devastated with the claim that they were trying to cover up, because that's not how they saw it.
The jurors really got to see Ben Elliott's police interrogation. I'm curious as to, what they felt about his demeanor and what you felt about his demeanor, because you spoke to him.
That's the hard part, Anne-Marie, in these cases. We are judging people by how they act under the worst moments of their lives, but we've never met those people before. So it's a very tough part of any criminal trial to try to figure out, how do you judge the demeanor of somebody? The Ben that I saw on police cam footage was very similar to the Ben I met when I saw him in the jail. He was a little more animated with me because apparently his grandmother was and is a fan of mine. And so he did say to me kind of that his grandmother, under different circumstances, would be happy to know that I was the one who interviewed him. So I saw more of a open, talkative Ben. But through most of the interview, the Ben we saw in police cam footage was pretty much the same guy I interviewed. And his parents told me the same thing, that is who he is. I did talk to him about his affect and the fact that he was talking about things that seemed so unrelated to what had just happened to his sister. You see him during the interview with the detective talking about, he's just been taken from his home after stabbing his sister, and he's talking about taking his SAT. That struck me when I saw it. And he said to me that he had just shut down. He didn't want to believe that he had done what he had done to his sister, and he was trying not to think about it.
So, Erin, the other thing that really jumped out at me, that bothered me, tell you the truth, is that he calls his home, he calls it a crime scene. Did you get a chance to ask him, why would you call it a crime scene?
Well, I did. And his answer was because it was a crime scene. I mean, we hear him in 911 saying he killed his sister. So he clearly thought it was a crime. He said he knew that they would cordon it off. I mean, he kind of knew what the police would do. So he did not find the fact that he had used that term unusual.
So, that was just some of what the jury had to consider. But there were other pieces of evidence that swayed them. What were kind of the big pieces of evidence for the jury?
Well, you point out demeanor was a big one. The number of stab wounds, because the prosecution did make a big deal about it. And one of those wounds was very deep. And the prosecution said that goes to the idea that he intentionally stabbed her. The prosecution also talked to the jurors about the fact that, according to the prosecution, there should have been blood spatter. She was stabbed in the neck, and the prosecution, and this is all just their theory, there was no proof of it, but the prosecution argued that the pillow that was near Megan had been used by Ben to keep her from yelling, and that kept blood spatter from hitting the wall. But Ben had said he used the pillow, but he says he did it to try to stop the bleeding. Near the end of, it was during their closing, the prosecutors told the jurors, well, we have no motive, but you never know what goes on behind closed doors. And I think that really struck the jurors.
So the jurors initially were split 7-5, but then ultimately they all come around and it's a unanimous decision, right? They find Ben Elliott guilty of first-degree murder. I just thought maybe a lesser charge would have been more appropriate, like manslaughter or something like that, instead of first-degree murder.
Yeah, I should also point out, so when you say 7-5, it was 7 people initially were for guilty and 5 for not guilty. When you see that these are young people and a young defendant, you might think, well, do you really want to do first-degree murder? This is his twin. But what you have is a 17-year-old teenager who's dead, and you have 2 stab wounds. And I think the prosecutors, they believe he had the intent to kill her, and that's first degree, and that's why he was charged with that. And I should also point out with the jurors that even though there were 5 initially who thought that Ben might not be guilty, they all came around to a unanimous decision of guilt and were satisfied with that decision at the end.
Well, you say that. We know that prosecutors wanted a sentence of 40 years. But this might give us a little window into what the jury was grappling with, because a member of the jury asked for leniency. It makes you wonder.
Well, leniency, according to the juror, because he felt so bad for the parents. But I do want to leave you with this idea of what Ben said to me, which I thought was interesting. Ben believes that some of the jurors did have reasonable doubts. And he points out that the judge could have sentenced him to 40 years, but instead chose to sentence him to a much shorter period of
Yes.
time. And he said to me, if people really thought that he had killed his sister in cold blood, wouldn't they want him locked up for the rest of his life?
We'll remind people he got a prison sentence of 15 years that makes him eligible for parole in 2032. He will still be a young man, 28 years old if he does get parole at that time.
And I do want to add, Anne-Marie, that Ben is appealing this verdict.
How are his parents and her parents as well, how are they coping? It occurred to me that they probably barely had a moment to sort of get over the shock of Megan's death and even begin grieving for her before they had to pivot and think about Ben.
I have not spoken to them recently, but I did speak with them this summer. And they are, as you can imagine, just devastated. When you speak with them, you can feel their pain. And they're a little bewildered to this day, wondering why there wasn't in their mind more of an attempt to find out what really happened in the early morning hours to Megan. They miss Megan. They worry about Ben. They have an older daughter. And I noticed through the interview, they just held hands through the whole thing. And so I said, oh my gosh, you guys, you're getting through this together. And they said we couldn't have gotten through it without each other. And that was very touching to me.
Absolutely. Well, this is unlike one that I've seen so far on 48 Hours. I think you're going to take the viewers on kind of a bit of a roller coaster. And I'm curious to see where everyone lands once they watch it. Thank you so much, Erin.
Thanks so much, Anne-Marie. I think we're going to have this in our hearts for a while, too.
Indeed. Before we leave, Erin, you have another podcast. Can you tell us about it?
It's called 15 Inside the Daniel Marsh Murders. This is, again, one of those cases that it's really hard to shake. This was not only a thrill killer, but he was just 15 when he killed two people that he did not know, two strangers, just to know what it felt like to kill someone. So it raises all kinds of important questions about what do you do when you have a 15-year-old killer who then is diagnosed as a psychopath? Do you keep him in prison the rest of his life? What do you do? And the impact on the victims' families. It's a very moving and chilling podcast.
So you can find 15 on your favorite podcast app. If you like this episode, please rate and review on Apple Podcast or on Spotify.